The knock on my door that Saturday morning didn't just sound loud, it sounded personal. Bam, bam, bam! I had just poured my first cup of coffee. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, 3 people were standing on my porch. All of them wore matching polo shirts, had clipboards in their hands, and gave me those fake smiles that clearly meant trouble. The woman in the middle stepped forward. "Good morning," she said, with a sweet voice that didn't match her cold eyes. "We're from the HOA. We need to talk about your violations." I raised my eyebrows. Violations? I just moved in 2 days ago. The tall man next to her flipped through some papers. Yes. First, your trash bins are not hidden behind the fence. Second, your mailbox isn't HOA approved. And third, your lawn isn't up to standard. I stared at them, confused. Then I laughed. I'm not in your HOA. And that's when everything changed. The woman's fake smile disappeared. Her eyes narrowed like a cat about to attack. "Sir, everyone in this neighborhood is part of the HOA. Non-compliance is not an option." "I'm serious," I replied calmly. "This property is outside of your HOA. It's not under your control." She took a step closer. Her voice dropped low. "We'll see about that." She pulled out her phone and started dialing. I didn't think she'd actually call the cops, but she did. Less than 10 minutes later, I heard sirens. 3 police cars slowly rolled down the quiet street. Neighbors peeked out of their windows like it was a show. 4 officers stepped out, hands resting on their belts. One of them walked up to me. "Sir, we got a call about a disturbance." I pointed at the HOA trio. "Yeah, these folks called the cops because I told them I'm not in their HOA. The woman immediately jumped in, talking fast. "This man is refusing to comply with community rules. He's being aggressive." I raised both hands. "Aggressive?" "I just said I'm not part of their HOA. That's all." The officer looked at me seriously. "Do you have paperwork proving that your property isn't part of the HOA?" "Yes," I answered confidently. "I do." I went inside, grabbed my folder, and handed the officer the property documents. While he read them, I looked at the HOA lady. She was smirking like she thought she had already won. But what she didn't know was that she was picking a fight with the wrong person. The officer flipped through the papers and nodded. "Ma'am, he's right. This property isn't under HOA rules. It was bought through a foreclosure. HOA records were never updated." Her smirk faded instantly. Her face turned pale. She forced a laugh. "Well, we'll see what the board has to say. We have power here." I crossed my arms. "Not over me." She leaned closer and whispered just loud enough for the officer to hear. "You'll regret this." Then she turned and walked away like a villain in a cheap drama. The officer gave me a half smile. HOAs can be persistent. "Keep these documents handy. This might not be the last time." "I will," I said, closing the folder. "Trust me." The patrol cars drove away. The HOA trio disappeared around the corner. I stood on my porch, warm sunlight on my face, coffee in hand. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't. Something in that woman's eyes told me this was just the beginning. They had no idea who I really was, and they definitely didn't know what was coming next. I thought that after the cops left, the HOA would finally leave me alone. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The next morning, I walked outside to grab my mail and froze. A big bright orange violation notice was taped to my front door. Another one was stuck to my mailbox, and another one was hammered into the ground near my driveway. Each one listed fines for the same things: my trash bins, my mailbox, my grass. And at the bottom, in bold letters, "Failure to comply may result in legal action or eviction." I actually laughed out loud. Eviction? From my own property? I pulled the signs down and tossed them aside. But just as I did, the same woman from the day before, the one with the sweet but scary smile, walked up the driveway. 2 other HOA board members followed behind here. She didn't even say hello. "Well," she said sharply, "I see you got our notices." "Yeah," I said, folding my arms. "And you can keep them." "I already told you, I'm not part of your HOA." She tilted her head like I was a child. "Honey, everyone is part of the HOA. That's how it works. We make the rules here. And if you don't follow them," she stepped closer, "you'll pay for it." "Actually," I said calmly, "you can't make me do anything. I bought this property outside of your HOA jurisdiction." Her smile vanished. We'll see about that. She turned to the man next to her. Call the towing company. I stepped back. Wait, what? The man pulled out his phone and started dialing. I pointed to my truck parked on the driveway. That's my truck, on my private property. The woman crossed her arms. We have the right to tow it for non-compliance. You don't have that right, I said, my voice rising. She smirked. We'll see. Within 15 minutes, a tow truck showed up, its engine rumbling loudly. The HOA trio stood there, watching me like predators waiting for their prey. But this time I wasn't alone. My neighbor, an older man named Bill, walked over from across the street. He'd lived there for over 20 years. Hey! Bill shouted. You can't tow that truck. He's not even part of your stupid HOA. The tow driver hesitated. Ma'am, is this property HOA or not? It is, the woman snapped. It's under our rules. Bill shook his head. No, it's not. That house got out of HOA years ago during the foreclosure mess. Everybody on this street knows that. The driver lowered his hands from the tow controls. I'm not touching it if there's a legal issue. The woman's face turned red. She spun around and barked at me. This isn't over! She stormed off down the street, dragging her little group behind her. Bill patted my shoulder. They've done this before, he said. They think they run the entire neighborhood. I can see that, I replied. But they picked the wrong house this time. Bill gave me a curious look. Why? I smiled a little. Let's just say they're in for a surprise. Later that evening, I was sitting in my living room when my doorbell rang again. Ding dong. I opened the door and found 2 uniformed officers standing there. The same ones from yesterday. Sir, one of them said carefully, we got another call. The HOA claims you threatened them. I actually laughed. Threatened them? I've barely even raised my voice. The second officer glanced down at his notepad. They say you're refusing to follow their rules and that you made them feel unsafe. I rubbed my forehead. This was getting ridiculous. Officers, with all due respect, I have every legal document proving this. Property isn't part of their HOA, and now they're harassing me. The first officer nodded slowly. We kind of figured. That HOA group calls us a lot. Of course they do, I muttered. Look, the second officer said, just keep everything documented. If they keep this up, you can file a harassment complaint. I'll do more than that, I said under my breath. When they left, I sat down at my kitchen table, pulled out my laptop, and opened the property management system I used for my business. See, what the HOA didn't know was that I wasn't just a random homeowner. I owned multiple properties across the state. And 2 weeks before I moved in, I had also finalized the purchase of this neighborhood's entire mortgage note, which meant that technically, I wasn't just their neighbor. I was their landlord. They had no idea that their power over me didn't exist anymore. In fact, soon, I'd be the one holding all the power over them. The next day, I walked into the HOA office, a small building near the community park. The same woman was sitting behind the desk, smug as ever. She looked up at me and said, You're not supposed to be here. I smiled politely. Actually, I am. I reached into my bag, pulled out a thick envelope, and placed it on the desk in front of her. She frowned. What's this? Paperwork, I said simply. I suggest you read it carefully. She tore it open, flipped through the documents, and her confident face slowly turned pale, because in that envelope were the official ownership records of the community's mortgage. I was now the owner of the HOA's land lease. Her hands trembled slightly. This can't be real. Oh, it's very real, I said softly. And starting next week, you'll be receiving new terms for your HOA operations. You work for me now. Her jaw dropped. For the first time since I met her, she had nothing to say. I leaned in a little closer. You should have checked who you were messing with. And then I walked out, calm, silent, in control. But I knew this war wasn't over. HOA people don't give up easily. The real fight was just about to begin. The day after I dropped that envelope on her desk, the entire neighborhood felt different. The HOA board was quiet. No patrols. No more orange violation papers taped to my door. No smug little smiles at the mailbox in the morning. But I knew better. That kind of silence doesn't mean peace. It means they were planning something. And I was right. 3 days later, I got a certified letter in the mail. Big bold letters at the top. I actually laughed when I read it. They still thought they had power over me. But this time, instead of avoiding them, I showed up. The hearing was held in the community clubhouse, a big open room with folding chairs, a podium, and a banner that read, HOA Community Matters. About 20 people were sitting there. Some board members, some neighbors, and right at the front, her, the woman in the purple suit, the same one who had called the cops on me that very first day. She banged the little wooden gavel on the table. Let's begin. I leaned back in my chair, calm and silent. She spoke loudly as if to impress the neighbors. We are here to address Mr. She glanced down at the paper. The non-compliant resident at 317 Willow Lane, who refuses to follow HOA rules. A few neighbors glanced at me. Some with concern, same with curiosity. Then she added, this behavior sets a dangerous example. If one person ignores the rules, everyone will. We cannot allow this. I waited for her little speech to end, and then I stood up. Are you done? I asked calmly. Her jaw tightened. Excuse me? I asked if you're done accusing me of something you have no legal power over. The room went silent. She lifted her chin. Sir, as board president. All rise. I smiled slightly and pulled out a folder from my bag. The same one I'd given her earlier. This isn't about community standards, I said. This is about reality. I walked up to the front, turned to the crowd, and held up the documents. I didn't just move into this neighborhood, I said clearly. 2 weeks before I bought my house, I also purchased the mortgage note for the entire community, which means the land your HOA operates on is now owned by my company. A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. She tried to laugh. That's ridiculous. The HOA owns this community. No, I said, stepping closer. The HOA leases the land. And now that lease belongs to me. I handed copies of the official legal documents to the board, members sitting next to her. They looked down at the papers, and one of them quietly whispered, Oh my God, it's real. The woman's confident smile started to crack. I leaned in slightly. So no, I'm not your non-compliant resident. I'm your landlord. Someone in the crowd actually clapped. Bill, my neighbor, grinned wide in the second row. She slammed the gavel again. This is outrageous. You can't just... Oh, but I can, I cut in, my voice steady. And I already did. I placed a new document on the podium. These are the updated lease terms. Effective immediately, your HOA board will operate under new management. And before you say anything, every legal check has been done. This is final. Her face turned red. She stood up. You're trying to take away our power. I nodded slowly. I'm taking back what you abused. I turned to the crowd. I've talked to many of you over the past week. I've heard how tired you are of the bullying, the petty fines, the fake power. That ends today. The neighbors started clapping, this time louder. Some people stood up. A few even shouted, Finally! And about time. She pointed a finger at me, shaking. This isn't over. I'll fight this. I tilted my head slightly. Go ahead. But just so you know that the HOA's legal counsel already called me this morning. They confirmed they have no grounds to stop this. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked powerless. And honestly, it felt good. I looked at the rest of the board. Here's what's going to happen. Starting next month, HOA fees will be reduced by 40%. All unnecessary fines will be removed. No more harassment. No more calling the cops on people for leaving their trash bins outside. The room erupted in applause. People smiled. Some even hugged each other. For the first time since I moved in, it felt like a real community. She quietly gathered her papers, her face pale, and walked out of the room. No more threats. No more smug grin. Just silence. That night, I sat on my porch again with a warm cup of coffee in the same place this all started. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Bill walked over, hands in his pockets. You really showed them, huh? I chuckled. I wasn't trying to show them. I was trying to stop them. Bill nodded. They've been running this place like a little kingdom for years. People were too scared to fight back. Not anymore, I said. The crickets chirped. The porch light glowed softly. It felt right. I looked around at the houses on the street. The people who lived here weren't just neighbors anymore. They were free. And it all started because someone knocked on my door and told me, I had to follow their rules. I smiled. Wrong house. If you ever had to deal with a power-hungry HOA, hit that like, comment, or share button, and tell me what you would have done if this happened to you. Follow for more crazy real estate and neighborhood stories.